Good morning, Internet. This is Alex the Sudokus, and it is Saturday, the 24th of October 2020. Happy weekend, everyone. We have another New York Times medium Sudoku today, which we are going to solve slowly and methodologically? Oh, I don't know. But I'm going to solve it slowly so I can actually explain every step of the way. So we're going to start by putting in some Snyder notations, or rather the method we're going to use is Snyder notations, whereby we only look for two candidates in each cage being a grid of 9 cells. If we find more than two candidates in any cages for any numbers, we're going to ignore them. If we have less than two, that means we know where it is. So just to explain candidates. For example, these twos locks a pair of twos. The twos can only go in these two cells. So I've got two candidates, therefore I'm going to pencil mark them in. Over here, this two and that two locks a pair of twos there. By the way, I've already looked at ones whilst I was talking and I couldn't see any possibilities. So as an example, these two ones leaves me 3 possible ones, and this is an example where I'm not going to pencil mark them in because that leaves me 3 or more candidates. So I'm just going to focus on the twos. So twos, I've got 3 candidates here, so I'm going to ignore that. And the reason for that is we're trying to keep the grid nice and clean, so that it's easier to see what's going on, see any patterns that may emerge. For difficulties levels like medium New York Times, or most of the times for the hard New York Times, Snyder notations are enough to actually solve the puzzles. But any harder, if the puzzles are really hard, and sometimes you do have to fill in all the cells, but typically with Snyder notations you can actually place a lot of numbers anyway. So let's have a look at the threes. So I've got a pair of threes there because that 3 locks out the column and this 3 locks out the row. So these two threes are now locked in row 2, but within cage 1. Some people call cages boxes. I prefer the term cage because people may confuse a single cell as a box, basically. So I prefer to use consistent terminologies. So anyway, these two threes are locked in row 2 within this cage. Well, wherever they are, they can't go on the same row anymore for the rest of the grid. Therefore, these two cells can't be threes anymore. So we call them a pointed pair because they point in a direction that they are lined up. So if they're lined up horizontally, that row can no longer contain any additional threes. And if they're lined up vertically, like these twos, no other twos can go in the same column. So with that in mind, I can rule out row 2, and I've got row 1 ruled out because of the confirmed 3. So that leaves me a pair of 3s here as well. So this is how we use them. So once you recognize the pattern, then you can just focus on the pencil markings and not have to think about the logic of 3s being ruled out on the row anymore. So anyway, that's all the 3s. Now 4s we can actually place in here because of this 4 and that 4 ruling out all 3 of the remaining 3 cells. So that has to be a 4. So this is the power of Snyder notation. I've just basically erased a 3 when I placed a 4. And since I'm only pencil marking in 2 possible candidates at a time within any cage, that means the remaining cell has to be correct. So therefore that has to be a 3. And this 3, I can use it to erase any additional pencil markings on the rows and the columns. So I can erase that 3 because that can no longer be a 3. So again, I've just erased a 3, so therefore I can place another 3. So since I've placed some 3s, I'm just going to quickly see if they have any influences on the 3 pencil markings. For example, this one, in conjunction to that, rules out rows 5 and 6, and this 3 rules out column 9, so that gives me another pair of 3s. So once I've done that, I'm going to look back at the 4 and see if the 4 does anything else for us. So it doesn't do anything, so I'm going to focus on the other 4s. So this 4 and that 4 locks a pair of 4s in a kind of nice smooth way. That's not lined it up vertically or horizontally, so there are no pointed pairs here. Anything else? Not that I can see on the 4, so let's move on to 5s. So now I'm going to start to speed up a little bit and just use pattern recognition now. So in that I'm just going to look at the grid. I'm going to point out what numbers I'm using to place the candidates. So if you're confused, then do slow down a little bit just to make sure that my logic is correct. In this cage, I've only got 2 cells left, so the 2 numbers left, and either way, they enforce 2 pencil markings, 2 candidates for those numbers, so I might as well put them in. So they have to be 5s and they have to be 6s. So they're forming pointed pair 5s and 6s. So why don't we have a look at the 5? So they point over here with that 5. So I've got a pair of 5s locked down. Over here, I've got no other 5s looking down into this cage, so I can't resolve that. So there are no more 5s. So what about 6s? Well, let's stay on the pointed pair of 6s in conjunction with that 6 means the 6s have to be up there. But that doesn't give me anything because that's a triple. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. We have no other 6s, so 6 is quite a weak number. We consider that weak when there are not many occurrences of it. So we're just going to bear that in mind for later, in case we need it. So 7s, well 7s are locked up here because of these 2 7s, but I've also got 7 looking into that cell. So 7 is actually conventionally locked in that cell. So now these 2 7s locks another 7 down here. And now these 2 7s locks a pair of 7s down here, but I also have a 7 sitting into one of the cells, so I can lock them down. And these 2 7s, in conjunction with that 7, locks a pair of 7s down here. But that 7, along with these 2 7s, actually locks a 7 there, so that erases a 7 pencil marking and places the final 7. So I've got all the 7s placed, so that was quite nice. 8s, I can place a pair of 8s there because of those 2 8s. And I think that may be it. So let's look at 9s. I've got 9 there because of these 2 9s. So, I can place another pair of 9s there because of this 9 and that 9 there. And let's see, another pair of 9s there because of these 2 9s. And I think that may be it. So, I've done a round of notations. So the reason I go from the numbers 1 to 9 rather than focusing on a cage at a time, some people like to do it by cages, which in a way kind of makes sense because it means you've exhausted all the possibilities per cage. Although actually no, that still doesn't make any sense. So the reason I go by the numbers is because sometimes you can see patterns. So you may, for example, like early on, we've identified there's a 6 on this row, although we did identify it through another pair of 6s. But let's say those 6s aren't there, but we managed to identify the 6 on this row in this cage. Well, they behave like the pointed pairs, except they're pointed triples. So with that, we can actually rule out this entire row, and with that we may be able to add additional pencil markings. So the idea is by staying on a number at a time, it's easier to see a pattern forming. So for example, with the 7s, it quickly unlocked all the 7s in one go. You can have potentially similar effects with the cages where you may be able to collapse a cage quickly, but I think in theory it's easier to see the patterns with a number at a time. But whilst you're doing the numbers, you can also additionally see patterns forming within the cages. I think it's easier to see patterns forming that way than looking at the cages within a specific cage and then be able to see patterns forming on the numbers at the same time. So whatever floats your boat, really. So now that we've done a round of notations from 1 to 9, what we want to do, first of all, is look at any weak areas. So weak area, by my definition, is any dimension. So a dimension is either a row, so this either a column in this case, a row, so horizontal row or cage. So I'm looking for any dimensions that has three or less cells remaining, a cell being a single box. So here I've only got 2 cells remaining, so I may want to have a look at it and see if I can actually deduce either of the numbers. So I'm looking for the 4 and the 6. So if I can see either of these numbers on the rows or the cages, I can solve these two numbers. For example, the 4 sees into this cell. So on this column, 4 can't go there, so 4 must be up here. And that allows me to deduce that 6 must go here then, if there's only one number left. So now with that 4, I can erase that 4 and place another 4. So let's follow the 4s. What can we do? Well, 4 is now locked down here because these two 4s take up the columns and that 4 takes up the row. So now these two 4s and that 4 locks another 4 over here, and that erased an 8. So I'm just going to place the 8, and I'm going to follow the 8 this time. So the 8 locks a pair of 8s over there, and 8 has to be in one of these 3 cells, but there are 3 possibilities, so we're not going to place that. So let's go back to the 4 now, because we've done all we can with the 8. Well, I've actually replaced all the 4s, so we don't even need to worry about that anymore. So we've done the column, we've done the 4s, so what else can we look at? Well, in this case now, we've only got 2 free cells remaining. Well, you may ask, well, hang on, there are 4 cells remaining, but now we're going to talk about matching pairs. So this 2 and the 9, well, they're locked in 2 positions, and whenever you have 2 cells locked in 2 positions, no other numbers can go in them because it'll break the pairing. If I put any numbers in this cell, then I've got 2 and 9 locked in the same cell, and that would break the puzzle. So whenever you see a matching pair within the same dimension, where there are 2 only numbers available in that cell, so in this case, I've only got 2 and 9s in these two cells, so they're now locked as a matching pair. In here, I've got 5 and 6 locked in this cage, but also they happen to follow on the same row as well, so they're also locked horizontally on the row. Therefore, 5 and 6 can go outside of these 2 cells because they're pointed pair, remember? But no other numbers can go in these 2 cells. Similarly, 2s and 9s, well, no other numbers can go in there, so I've only got, in theory, 4 cells left in this column, but in this cage, I've got 3 numbers left, so we can actually rule out that, I can tell you that this is a 6 and that's a 5. But we'll go back to that later. Let's deduce this first. I've only got 2 numbers left in this cage, so they have to be 6s and, what are they, 6s and 1s. So what can we do with that? Well, that's a pointed pair of 6s, so that rules out the 6 over here. So 6 has to go there, 5 has to go there. Another way of seeing it is, in this cage, we've only got 3 numbers left, and they have to be 1, 3, and 5. So that couldn't have been a 5. So that was how I originally deduced that. That's a 6 and that's a 5. But either way, let's place the numbers. So now, again, on this column, we've only got 3 cells left. So they are 1s, 5s, and 3s. Now, you'll notice that, why have I placed 3 candidates in this cage? Well, this is my kind of leeway with my Snyder notations extensions, I guess. If I find a triple within a cage, I always pencil mark them in, because think about it another way. Let's say in this cage, if I found a triple in this cage, let's say these 3 cells forms a triple, then they behave like matching pairs. So once I've got 1, 3, and 5 locked in 3 cells, well, no other numbers can go in them. So similarly, if I can find a triple in 3 cells, no other numbers can go in them. So by pencil marking them in, I can basically confirm that there's a triple in here, telling myself, okay, there's a triple locked in these cells. Then that will leave me with just like 4 different cells to play with. I guess it'll be more powerful if I say do a triple here, then that leaves me with 2 cells to play with, as an example. I tend to do that more often in hard puzzles, and also the reason I do that with triples is because most puzzles with New York Times, tends to be resolvable and tends to involve some sort of pairing or triples. So that's why I find them useful to just pencil mark in, basically. So anyway, let's see if there are any other weak areas on the puzzle. Here we've got 2, 9 and 1 remaining, and I quickly deduced that it's 2 and 9 because I've got 2 and 9 pencil marked in. So if I am consistent with my pencil markings, if 2s and 9s can't go in these two cells, then I would have reduced them already. So if there are any 2s and 9s on this row, I would have removed those pencil markings anyway. So it's safe to say 2 and 9 don't exist on this row when I see the pencil markings. But you gotta make sure that the pencil markings are correct. So if you forget to clean up your pencil markings, it may confuse you. So it's always worth seeing, okay, I see the 2 and a 9, so just quickly scan. Can't see any 2s and 9s, so brilliant. 2 of the 3 candidates, and 1 is the last one. By just basically counting from 1 to 9 and see if they are on the row. So I can tell you 1 can't go in there. So actually, the 1s are locked in these 2 cells. I would have come to the same conclusion by looking at this 1 and that 1 forming a pointed pair in this case anyway, but the logic that got me there was through looking at these 3 cells. So this can be 2 or 9 because it sees a 2, but it sees a 1, but it doesn't see a 2 or 9. But before I move on, I've actually noticed the logic that I was talking about before, finding a triple in this cage. Although it wasn't in the 3 cells that I thought, but the 3 cells that I kind of like pretended to be the triple. It's actually a triple here because I've got 6s locked in rows 5 and 6. So the 6 has to be up here somewhere. So I've just ruled out these 3 cells. They're no longer in play. So what can I do with that? Let's see. 4, 6, 7, 3, 1. Nope, can't do anything with that. 1, 4, 7, can't do... Okay, unfortunately I can't do anything with that right now. Although I can actually. So where can a 5 go in this cage? Well, 5 can't go in the bottom. It can't go in any of these cells. So the 5 has to be in the middle row. So with that in mind, that's a pointed triple. Therefore, that can't be a 5 anymore. So it's useful to place the triple here to allow me to recognize that they're out of play. So now I can place another 5. So this 5 and that 5 locks a pair of 5s down here. And anything else? Nope, can't do anything else with that. So whilst I've got a 2 and 9 over here, I'm not going to pencil mark them in because that'll be pencil marking in one number, one of each of the numbers in this cage. And what I want to do is, if I'm gonna pencil mark in the 2s, I have to pencil mark in all the 2s in this cage. I'm restricting it to 2 possibilities, but I've actually got 4 possible places for the 2 and 3 possible places for the 9. So I'm not going to touch that. But let's look at this cage. I've got a triple here. This is a 1, 2 and 9 triple that I formed. Because I've placed all the 1s, all the 2s and all the 9s. And they share exactly the same 3 cells. So therefore this cell is the only cell that's remaining in this cage. So that allows me to place the 8. Even though in theory this could be an 8 as well. But because if I look at the 8, I would have normally done 2 8s. But because I've got a triple within this cage, the 1, 2 and 9, I can ignore that and just place the 8 straight there. So what does this 8 do? I rules out that 8. So 8 can go here. And 5 goes here. So that 5 erases that 5. This 8 locks an 8 over here, but that's not useful for me. But it also locks a pair of 8s up here. Do I have anything else with the 8s? No, I haven't. By the way, just to confirm that my theory is correct about this being a triple. So let's say this is a 1, then hold on. What happens in if this is a 1, then this can't be a 1 anymore, and there has to be a 9, and there has to be a 2. If this is a 2, then that can't be a 2 anymore, it has to be a 9, and there has to be a 1. So, under any circumstances, if this is a 9, then that would be a 2, and that would be a 1. And these 3 cells are basically interlocked. So, if you have basically, if you have three numbers occupying the same three cells in any dimensions, that would form a triple. Just like we've got a 1, 2, 9 triple here, because we knew that this was a 2 or 9. So, but if you've got three cells stretched over four different, three numbers stretched over four different cells, then it doesn't work anymore. But you could potentially have a quadruple locked together as well, but usually they're not that useful. Sometimes they are though. So what else can we do? Oh, just want to sneeze. Pardon me. So I've got another weak area in this cage. So what are they? They are ones. Well, I've got 1 seeing into that cell, so ones have to be there. 3s, they can go anywhere. So remember, I've only got triple left, so that's why I'm pencil marking them in. And 6. So 6 can't go in that cell, so oops. 6s have to go there, so that's another triple. Does that help me? Wow. If we look at these two cells, 1 and 3 are the only possible candidates in these two cells, because I've locked down 1, 3 and 5 in here. I've locked down 1, 3 and 6 in here. So remember what we said about the matching pairs. If they share the same dimension and they're the only possibilities within those cells, and they are, because these two cells can only be 1 and 3s, then on this row I can't have any more 1s and 3s for a start, and these two cells can't contain any other cells. Well, actually, it's more the fact that they're acting as a pointed pair. So that means 1 and 3 can't go in these two cells. Well, look what we've got here. We've got 1 and 3 in these two cells. In this cell, got 1, 3 and 6. And they can no longer be 1 and 3. Because if that's a 1, that has to be a 3. If that's a 1, that has to be a 3. So this can't be a 1 or a 3. So I've just solved the 6. And if that's a 6, then that can't be a 6 anymore, which means that's a 3. So I've just magically solved these 1s and 3s as well. So these can't be 3s anymore, and it has to be a 5, and it has to be a 1. So yeah, that's the power of matching pairs, basically. So what else can we do? Well, this 1 resolves this cell as a 9, because it can't be a 1 anymore. So that's a 9. That's the only 1 left in this cage, and that can only be a 2. So these 2s locks 2 over there, although on this row I've only got 1 number left anyway. Anything else I can do? So let's look at the 9s, 1s. So 1 and 9 are in these two. In fact, this has to be a triple, because if you look at the column, there are only 3 cells remaining. So they have to be 1, 9, and 6. So, pardon me. So let's put them in. And that means these have to be a triple as well, of 3, 8, and 2. But 2 can't go in these two cells, so the 2 has to go here. So now we've only got a single 3 left. It's in here. And we've only got a single 8 left. It has to go there. So that's been resolved as well. So these two 8s locks an 8 over here. And does this 8 do anything else for us? Well, it allows us to now pencil mark in the 2 8 in this cage. And the 8 has to be in these two cells. So that's not too bad. Also, in this cage, 9 has to go in these two cells, because 1, 3 and 6 are locked down as a triple. So now we've formed another matching pair. So there's only 1 cell left that's playable in this cage, and it has to be a 5. So because these 3 cells have to be 1, 3 or 6, so the 5 can't go in there. These 2 cells have to be 8 or 9, so the 5 can't go in there. So this 5 cleans up that 5, placing another 5. And finally, I've got the final 5 over here, because of these two 5s ruling out those 2 rows. So I've just erased an 8, so I can place an 8 here. That 8 looks into this 8. Now, whenever you have a matching pair, and you've got a number looking into it, you can just basically place the opposite number, because basically it's saying this can't be an 8, it has to be the 9, and the 8 has to be in the other parts of the matching pair. So just to save some time. So what do we do next? Well, we've got another weak areas of 2 cells. So they have to be 3 or 6, because I've got 3 and 6 pencil marked in. And providing that's correct, the column has to take a 3 or 6, and immediately I can see a 3 there. So that has to be the 3 and that has to be the 6. So 3 is now here. Now these two 3s, locks, the 3 down here, although I could have seen that by the column anyway. These two cells are resolvable as well. They have to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. That has to be a 6. And that has to be a 2. So, because that's the only number that's not taken on that row. So now, let's see, the 6 sees into this 1, 6 pair. So 1 and 6 are resolved. So these have to be 1s. But on this column, I can deduce that this number is a 3. No, not 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a 9. Yeah. And if that's a 9, and that can't be a 9 anymore. Also, this 6 erases that 6 as well. So actually, this has to be a 1. And this is a 6-9 pair. Okay, so what have I got left in here? Well, this cell on the row has to be a 2. So that means also this 2 reduces this 2 and 9 anyway. So, and that 9 resolves the 6 and 9 over there, and that 6 resolves the 1 and 6. So the only number left I've got is a 1, and that solves today's medium New York Times Sudoku. I hope that's kind of useful. If it is, please leave a like and subscribe, and I shall see you tomorrow. Bye!